Welcome to Expanding Consciousness. I'm Gina, and today's conversation is with Freddy Silva, who is a best-selling author and leading researcher of ancient civilizations, restricted history, sacred sites, and their interaction with consciousness. He has published 9 books in 6 languages and produced 16 documentaries. In this conversation, we explore Freddy's new book, Portals, which has instantly become a #1 bestseller. This book, Portals, helps you to enhance your own personal mystical experiences as Freddy shares how to interact directly with portals. Oh, hi Freddy. How are you?
Hello, darling.
Hello. Thank you so much for your time today to talk about your new book release, Portals. This sort of is a slightly different for you though, isn't it? Because your previous books are kind of based more on research and a little bit more factual and about restricted history and so forth, but this is a little bit more personal for you, isn't it? You kind of let us into your life and your experiences a bit more.
Yeah, and I've really not wanted to write about myself ever, unless there's something that's specific to sort of making a point. I never think that people really are interested in what I have to say about myself rather than what the actual project is about. Sacred Site is what it's all about. And then I got talked into something by a publisher, and she says, "Well, I know you don't want to talk to another publisher ever again. I've had my share of experiences of getting 10%, and you have to sell like 1 million books before you actually sort of stop driving a 20-year-old car." So I figured, no, I don't really want to work with another publisher ever again. It's a pain. And financially, it's not that rewarding. I said, well, I'll take you out for lunch and I'll convince you. I said, all right, impress me. And I'll do anything for a free lunch. And she says, well, if people really want to hear about your personal stories and how you end up doing the research that you do, I thought, really? Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, who am I to argue with public opinion then? I guess I better write down some personal stories. And it was kind of fun going back through memory lane of 30 years of unusual things. And it actually was very interesting. I have had some very interesting things happen to me. And then they lead on to the research, of course. And she also said that it can also, it's time that we did something practical about people working with portals because we're so disconnected from everything. And the whole purpose of working with these hotspots of energy is that you find yourself and you improve yourself and you go out and be the change you wish to see. And I thought, you know what? It's funny you should say that because I keep talking about this stuff forever. I never actually written it down. And I thought, okay, I can do that. So we'll do this sort of part 3, which is the sort of the practical side of how to work with these things. And I thought, okay, I'm listening. And the middle section would be other people's experiences. And I thought, oh, so it's actually going to be a sort of book then. I can write this on the way home from flying from New Zealand. 14 hours, why should I sleep,
Yeah.
And in fact, yeah, half the book was actually written on the plane. It was actually kind of funny, my headphones and things. And but so it turned out really well. I ended up validating what these people had experienced. They didn't know what I was going to write about. We just volunteered for people to share their stories, and then they end up validating what I'm talking about as well. So it became a very synchronistic kind of book, and it all gelled very nicely together. So it's more of a practical thing, more a personal thing, but also a scientific thing, but without all the 50 pages of references and bibliographies. And sadly, of course, no pictures. They don't do picture books, this particular company. So it was very easy on the mind, which a lot of people who've been sort of reading my stuff for years are going to be very surprised that it's like, wow, this is really easy. I'm not having to go to a dictionary and find out what the hell he's talking about.
Yeah.
So it'll see what happens, but so far the response has been very, very good.
I love the practical approach, and it is in 3 stages, like you mentioned. Like the first sort of section or part of the book is sort of sharing your own experiences, and then the second part is going into other people's stories. And
Yeah.
I always believe there's synchronicities, like nothing's by accident. So, yeah, all those stories
Yeah.
kind of validate different points of your own experiences as well. And then the third part being really, really practical. I have to say, just hands on heart, thank you so much for remembering us Southern Hemisphere people in the third part of your book, because I did note that you had said that when you open a
That was my
portal that you
pleasure.
go clockwise, but in the Southern Hemisphere you go anti-clockwise. I was like, hallelujah, someone's remembered us. Like,
That's
otherwise
right.
we would have been all discombobulated, like closing portals when we were meant to be opening them and getting all muddled. And
And
so
getting
thank
north to south as well when you're building your own portal, which is something else I've been teaching for years anyway. And in fact, I did this in my first trip to New Zealand. I was doing a presentation in Auckland, Sorry, no, Wellington. And we were in this Masonic lodge of all places, and we were building a stone circle. And then someone halfway through said, is north south? I said, no, north is north. Why? Well, you're in the southern hemisphere. I said, okay, just take what I said for the last 3 hours and turn it upside down. South is not your north, but east is still east. I thought, good, I've just learned something.
Yeah. It makes a huge difference. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I know. And I
Um,
found myself driving south of Wellington and found myself in the ocean. I thought I was going north. It's like, because I'm in
oh,
my mind is still sort of thinking the other way around. Yeah, it takes me about a week to get my act together when I come over to New Zealand. Kind of funny.
yeah. How do you find going around the world? There are some hot spots. I know in the book you talk a little bit about Peru and some other areas. How are there areas in the world that you would describe have kind of portals for different reasons, like different types of magic or ascension or different reasons, ways of raising our vibration in terms of like, is it quite country specific around the type of portals there are, or is it just a global thing? Like,
It's a global thing. I mean, energy doesn't give a damn one way or the other. It's you stick your electricity in the sorry, you stick your fingers in the electricity socket, and you still get an electric shock. That's just energy.
yeah,
It's what you take there that defines it. But having said that, when we stop looking at these things on the landscape, I mean, Aboriginal people can do this really well. White people can do it really well. The Hopi do it really well. So you climb to the top of a mountain and you're exhausted, and you go, and they'll say, "Hey, there it is," and you go, "Where?" There, and there's nothing there. Of course, they can see it and they can sense it. And when we forgot how to look at these places, we began to build pyramids and Stonehenge and other places like that, and standing stones. So we wouldn't forget in the 21st century, when we're distracted with cell phones and all these other social media things, where to go. And they, over time, developed a specific application. So let's say Egypt is a very good example. People don't go to have a certain personal empowerment session at the Temple of Phila in the Nile. That was to do with healing, because it became predominantly to do with healing because of what was being done there over many thousands of years. So the energy is the underlying blueprint, but people adding their own particular use of the temple start creating their own type of sacred space. So it became kind of much more of a healing place. But you can still get other things done, but it's just that the energy is so overwhelmed in terms of the practical side of what they used to do there, that it's cemented into the stone. Because the stone remembers, it's full of quartz. It's like a computer. The more you put the intent in there, the more it remembers. So it becomes more of a sort of a healing place. Edfu, by contrast, is a personal empowerment place. People went there to sort of, become girly men and men. It's a very fiery place. Yeah, you don't go there to do subtle work. You go there to really get that fire lit up inside you. And so each one of them developed their own purpose over time, and the folklore kind of follows that as well. But at fundamentally, it's all just energy. It doesn't really matter in the end. And it also, you sort of and the way you kind of do it is that you sort of figure out what it is that you're looking for, and you're sending out your intent, which is a sort of a packet of electromagnetic energy, like an envelope, and it shoots it out into space. And you think, I think I'm not feeling well, I think I need to work on something, but I'm not sure what it is. But your subconscious knows, and it sends out this piece of information to all the points around the world, and one of them will go, "Hey, I've got that." And you were about to pack your bags to go to England or go to some stone circle in Scotland, and then suddenly all your plans change, and you find yourself in Fiji, in some, big sort of dolmen that they have there, which is very unusual because those things should be in Korea and Europe. So there's a big dolmen there, and you find yourself going, "Well, why did I go to Fiji?" And you go, "Oh, that's why." And suddenly the place talks back to you, and you start getting dreams and coincidences and other, books falling out of the bookshelves. And before you know it, you realize how it works. They know what you want better than you do, and you just let it go. Don't expect anything, and you'd be pleasantly surprised.
that's when we've really got to trust the process, right? When our plans change and just trust in the process that the universe has for us that leads us to the right portal that we need. Um, do you
Yeah.
think that with your book being released now around portals, as well as just thinking back to what you mentioned, that we there was a time when we could naturally just sense portals using all of our senses, that we just kind of knew where they were on the land. And then we got to the stage in our history where we started to build temples or make temples so that we didn't forget where they were. But now we aren't so much building temples anymore. So are we kind of at that tipping point now where our collective consciousness is ready to start sensing portals again? Is there some kind of resurgence happening? Because I feel that when books like yours come out, obviously it brings an awareness to portals throughout, a lot of our collective consciousness. And
God,
just
I
like
hope so.
that happened with crop circles, when there was a certain level of awareness that happened, crop circles started pinging up all over the place. Not in New Zealand, by the way, which I feel a little bit like we've missed
Oh,
out.
they,
But
they, they made a very famous hoax in Southland to try
yes,
and disprove the whole thing. And they said, oh, we just did it overnight. No, I actually contacted the hotel from England and found out the whole town showed up.
oh,
They'd marked the whole thing. Yeah, it's part of a big debunking thing. So you have one. Unfortunately, it's the wrong kind.
just not the real one. No. I only want the real ones.
Damn. Yeah,
Yeah.
Australia got the real one. That's not fair.
I know. So do you think there's some kind of like cultural or time in our humanity that we are shifting our consciousness into actually being ready for sensing portals ourselves using our own body, our own electromagnetic field?
Yeah, it's a good point, and I've sort of was working on that years ago. Just an observation that we stopped building temples, specifically in Europe, where so much of the concentration is. That it's still because they're much newer in Europe, so we have more of them. But we stopped building them around the 12th century. The Gothic cathedrals were the last ones, and they were built by people who really knew what they were doing. The Templars and the Cistercians brought the information from the Middle East. And they literally built Arab temples in the middle of Europe in the Christian kingdom, which is really funny. It drives Christians crazy when you tell them that. It's like, no, the arch, that Gothic arch, that's an Arabic arch. I mean, you're going into an Arabic building. So why are you annoying the Arabs and the Islamists? Just leave them alone. So they were trying to bring back a sort of resurgence because the main item on the menu in Europe in the Middle Ages was human flesh. And there's a lot of cannibalism going on there. So there was a certain resurgence and then a reawakening, and then it kind of got kiboshed again by the church. And since then, you can pretty much track the whole collapse of civilization since then, because we stopped going to sacred places and we stopped building temples. And it really began around the end of the Bronze Age. The Earth was hit by a lot of solar flares. It took out huge tracts of the planet. I mean, even in New Zealand, half of I think it was the east side of the South Island was actually burned to a crisp, and it's written in the White to Heart tradition as well. So it wasn't the Maori that killed all the birds and everything. It was actually a solar flare. So we kind of went into this sort of cocoon of fear and solar worship, and stopped giving our power away to strong men and things like that. And of course, 2,500 years later, that hasn't worked out too well. And so it's kind of funny that now we're beginning to get to the end of all the cycles that ancient people said, this is the change of ages. And it doesn't happen like that. It happens within a 60-year window. And so 2012 was just a medium cycle. Nothing's going to happen in 2012. I mean, the Maya just laughed at white people when they wrote all these books about the end of the world, and they thought, oh, God. No, it's a window of opportunity. You drive a Volkswagen Beetle, the engine rolls to 999,000. Does it stop? No, it goes to zero and it continues. It's still going. So we have this window of opportunity where we're trying to get our act together, trying to figure out what's gone wrong. Well, what's gone wrong is that we've not connected to the planet that gave us birth. And the planet needs to evolve as well, just like we do. And we're in the middle of huge catastrophic changes. So what the Egyptians said all along, and it's written on one of their walls, is that they were going to build the temples as an insurance policy. And I thought, that's a great thing, because they would look at the people and they'll say, well, they don't really need a temple. The temple's already in here. But when you forget that you are the temple, then we'll build one for you and you can walk in with all your problems. We can't leave the problems at the door. The temple doesn't want to hear about your problems, but it wants to help you. And they mark the hot spots of energy with the sites at the specific place called the Holy of Holies, or the altar. That's why it's called the altar. It alters you. And so they realized that when they looked around, people were still not quite moving up the ladder. And I can imagine two priests at the entrance to these temples smoking a cigarette and going, well, how are we doing this year? I don't know. I think humans they're still kind of, struggling. Okay, we're going to build another temple. And that's what they did. And it written on the back of Edfu, it says that if you make a copy of the pure arch of the sky and copy it on the face of the earth, then it'll act as a magical protector for you, unfadingly, eternally, and regularly. And I thought that's one hell of a great promise. And that's what they do. It's the geometry, it's the location of the land that stimulates the local energetic environment. So when you go in with all the weight on your shoulders, you walk in, you come out, and you're walking upright. It's like, woof. And you feel that you are a god because, well, you are. You never were anything but a god. So it became a sort of an insurance policy, but it did fall down by the wayside. And we've built very, very little, especially in the last 800 years. And you can see things degrading pretty quickly. So it's kind of interesting now to watch a lot more tourism. I hate using the word tourism because it's just trivial attention to things, but it is attracting a lot of people to ancient places, and a lot of them just don't get it. They'll go there and take a selfie to go home, but there are those people that do understand that something's changed when they get back in the car and they go home, and I see it happening a lot. So slowly, catchy monkey, as the phrase goes. That's how you do it. You go back to this to the land, back to the sacred sites, and slowly it'll touch some people, and then they become the change they wish to see. And hopefully that will become a sort of a ripple effect, and some people will follow you in terms of the example you're trying to set, and some won't, but that's okay. It's always been that way, and the earth was never meant to be perfect anyway. We're always going to be in a state of conflict because that's the way it's always been, but sometimes it's better than others. So the fact that we're going through huge chaos right now is a very good sign that, hopefully people like me are doing our job properly, putting new ideas into the sort of popular vernacular and seeing a chaos take place because it's breaking down old ideas and the old guard are fighting back. So if we were living in really quiet times right now, I would be concerned I'm not doing my job properly and my peers as well. So we are having an effect. It's going to be slow, but we are running out of time. We really are running up against the clock. So hopefully within our lifetime, we'll see it happen.
It sounds like that there's a couple of different stages people might be at in terms of, there are people that realize that the God or the source is within them and they are their own temple. And then there's others that still seek to go to these beautiful temples that have been built, these ancient temples, and access that energy, allow the imprint of that energy to go within their own energy field and potentially spark a remembrance of their own source code or who they are, their own connection that they've got to all of nature and the cosmos. And then within that, I would imagine that there is an imprint from those ancient temples that stay with them forever within that own individual
Oh yeah.
energy field. And then they can hold that imprint in the energy field. And wherever they go to in the world, back to their home and mingle with their family and friends, that energetic imprint is still kind of entangling and entraining a little bit with other people's energy fields, and little domino effect kind of happens where people start to remember, their own connection to the source and the cosmos and nature. Is that kind
Yeah.
of how you see it as well?
Yeah, I mean, you are an electromagnetic being at heart. So these places are electromagnetic as well and gravitational. So we're made of the same stuff. It's just that the temple's made of stone and you're made of flesh and bone, but essentially the same thing. And you're trying to basically lift your frequency so that you match the temples. And by doing that, you're tuning into a different radio station. And yeah, you start becoming that radio station like a beacon. And some people will get it and some people won't. And some people will hate you and some people will love you. And that's the way it is. It's like tuning forks in a room. You bang one tuning fork and all the forks that are in the same sort of resonance will resonate with that one. And the other ones are sitting there looking like pieces of metal. And that's the way it is. Or they'll create a dissonance because you also got the attraction of opposites. So it's very much true. It's we are having our consciousness raised because we are opening up. And here's the one thing that I learned from personal experience, and that was that sometimes if you're pushing things at sacred sites, the temple will look at you and say, "Well, no, no, you're still at the sort of the low level here. You still need to learn a little bit more." And I learned the hard way when I was in England, when I was falling flat on my face and getting up and learning not to do it the same way again, which is a great way of learning. You just don't make a habit of falling down. And I went to a place called the Devil's Den because you have to when it's called the Devil's something. There's something special that the church doesn't want you to know. So in Wiltshire, it turns out to be one of the oldest sites in the south of England. And I climbed over the fence and I could hear a really loud voice. And I was looking around if the farmer was staring at me or something. And it's like, well, you're not going to go any further. And I thought, what? And I thought, no, I'm just making it up. So I kept walking towards this big dolmen, and this booming voice, like it puts up a big wall in front of me. And I went, oh, okay, I'm feeling a little bit tension. Now I'm going to go back where I came from, back in the car. I'm going to go for tea with a good friend of mine who's a wonderful psychic. And so we sat down, she made a cup of tea, didn't tell her a thing. And she said, have you just been to the Devil's Den? I said, yes. How do you know? She goes, I know everything. And she does. And she helps the police with their inquiries, by the way. And she says, did you get the loud voice? I said, yeah. What's that all about? Well, you're still learning. You're trying to sort of run before you can walk, to coin the cliche. But you go back in a couple of years after you know a little bit more. And then when your energy field's built up, after you've gone to other places, you're building up that resonance. The devil's den is raw energy. It will just fry you. It will start undoing the very thing that you've been doing all along, even though you don't really know what you're doing, which is kind of great fun. But yeah, just build up that resonance and then go back in a few years and see what happens. And I thought, okay, I'll make a note of it, crazy lady. And she was absolutely right. 2 years later, I'll be sitting there. And I thought, hey, I haven't been back to the Devil's Den in 3 years. Drove up there, walked in. It was like red carpet treatment. And it's like, oh, okay, that's how it works. Yeah, these are living organisms. They're not just a bunch of rocks. They're organisms. They're like your extended family. And they'll never let you down, by the way. You don't take them for granted, but they never let you down. So there are people I like to hang out with, but when you've got to that point, then you're on to the next level of discovery. So you go to Peru, and then you build up that resistance again. Then you go to Egypt and you do that, and you keep building and building and building. And before you know it, you can see energy, you can see people coming out of walls, stuff like that, because we're all psychic, we're all intuitive. We're just being talked out of it. And then you can use it to win the lottery numbers, do all kinds of things. You can be a healer. I just before I left for New Zealand in March, I had it in my mind to pick up a lottery ticket, and then I got busy, and then I thought, oh, it's happened again. They make me get really busy, and I forgot to buy the ticket. Anyway, I got to Wellington in March, and I checked up the local lottery, and the local ticket was sold at the place just up the road from me, $1.5 billion. And I thought, they've done it again. So there's a bit of a joke going on at my expense. And in fact, I'm part of a group that we all have a laugh about this, that our incarnation wasn't about winning the lottery. We're going to work and make money the hard way because we probably were stinking rich in some lifetime and we are totally rotten, spoiled rotten. So I get it, but the management is just trying to say, yeah, you can do it for projecting into the future. You can use this energy to heal people, but you know what? That's not your path. But we are going to have a good laugh at your expense and enjoy your 20-year-old car. It's still running. I thought, oh.
Well, they do have a great sense of humour, that's right. And you've got to have a good laugh
Oh,
at
yes, they
yourself.
do.
Yeah.
Mm.
Hey, I'd love to steer in that direction a little bit because knowing your background, I know that you were in advertising and marketing for a while as a career, and you also are still probably a very talented musician, and that also could have become your career. But we know that through these amazing 9 books now and many documentaries that that's not the career you're in right now.
To be a rock musician, and look what happened. I ended up being a rock star. It's like, yeah, there is a
A
humor
rock,
to
yeah,
it.
different take on the rock
I
star.
wanted to. I know rock stars, and rocks that actually mirror the stars. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't quite. I misunderstood.
It's the universal joke again, right?
They kick my ass really badly all the time. It's really funny.
Exactly. I have noticed though that, reading your books, you've got that, you obviously have that amazing insight into acoustics and understanding music and music ratios and how,
Mm.
sound contributes, even like talking about toning that you talk about in the book Portals, how sound contributes to the atmosphere of a portal and how it can transport you to places. Well, it seems that it changed like part of your life was when you were in Egypt and you saw the Shining Ones or 30 tall white beings come out. That seemed
Coming
to be
into the
quite a
sun.
pivotal moment for you. Do you want to talk about that a little bit about how an experience in a portal can actually guide you and maybe steer you in a really different direction?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I quit my job the day after. I was still freelancing as a creative director, And once you get a big fat paycheck, it's hard to give it up. But at one point, you got to take a leap of faith because you realize that you're miserable, and this is what I want to do. So yeah, it's a bit of a change. But yeah, we went there expecting nothing, and we were in Egypt for the first time with our fearless, glorious leader, who's a wonderful psychic. And the idea is that we're going to go around doing spiritual terrorism, by which I mean we clean up the rubbish that people leave behind at sacred space. That they've got all the negative energy that goes into these places. They take all of their problems to the Great Pyramid and so forth, and it's a mess. And so someone's got to come by and clean up the garbage. So there's people like this all over the world. They don't really attract much attention. And our job was really to go there and just go in there, figure out the note of the king's chamber and tone, and put the intent into putting the energy back to where it should be. That's what we did. Not too much. We're going to bring it back to the light. No, that's what I want. The temple just wants to be balanced. It has its own purpose. So that's I'm just adding my ego. So the idea is find out that note that's resonant in that room and apply it and put the intention into the stone. So that's all we did. So somehow we didn't get private permission to go in. So we were sharing the building with a lot of tourists, and it's really noisy, and people are just there to look, take pictures of themselves. And I thought, we can't work like this. Oh, well, let's go up to the top of the building. So we did. And there's, for once, there's actually four guys, which is really unusual. Usually you get the token guy, but this time there's four guys. And suddenly everybody left the building. And I thought, oh, great stroke of luck. Quick, concentrate. And the lights go out. I mean, it's complete dark. It's darker than a coal mine. And I thought, great, where am I? Okay, feeling my way around. Okay, let's get started and do it properly. And there are notes coming out of us that no one's ever been able to replicate or do ever since. Even I couldn't do that again if I tried. And it's like you've become part of the chamber. You can't feel the stones anymore. You are the stones. And it was wonderful. And then I can't remember how long it was that these people just came out of the stones and surrounded us. And we're in pitch dark. We can't see a thing, but it's as clear as daylight. And they're much taller than me. So they're about 8 feet tall, just as they are described in the texts. And they're covered with this wonderful satin sort of cowl. That's beautiful. And you can't really see their heads beyond this section. So it's like they cover themselves like here for some strange reason. And there's a wonderful sort of glow about them. And I thought, okay, so I'm toning and I'm looking around like this. Like, this is really cool. I've got an internal dialogue going. I got a lot of questions I want to ask you guys. I don't know who you are, but this is really nice. And no fear at all. And then lights come on, and four guys look at each other, and we're in shock. I mean, you can tell that something's happened, and nobody wants to say a thing because we're all guys. So we went down out of the building, went back into the sunshine, and I said, okay, I'm going to be the girly man. Did anybody see what I saw up there? And the next guy finishes the sentence. I said, yeah, really tall people. Oh, yeah, dressed in these white satin things. And okay, so we all agree in total darkness, we saw about 30 people, very tall, coming out of the stones. Yeah. And we say go back into shock mode. So we walked over to the rest of the group that hadn't managed to get in, including our psychic leader. And we didn't say anything. And she just looked at us and looked at the group and went, well, we're tuning into the building, and found a few more rooms. And then we have some spare time. So we found that we tune into you guys to see if you are behaving or not. And yeah, you did a job. You went up there, you did exactly what was requested. And also you went there expecting nothing in return, which is really, really important when you're working with portals. Don't expect anything because it will come from you. The result will come from your ego and your need for gratification or glorification. So, and wasn't it wonderful to be greeted by the guardians of the building, at which point something is just twisted inside your head because you go, and you're trying to sort of not to cry because it's so emotional. And I said, so that really happened? And she goes, of course it bloody well happened. Why do you think we're doing this? And that's when you quit your day job and you go, I'm walking across that bridge and I don't care what happens, because if I die tomorrow, at least I tried doing something that I really wanted to do. And here I am 30 years later, having taken one vacation in 30 years, and it hasn't stopped since then. So it was a wonderful moment, and it's been one of many. And here's the funny thing, and you'll appreciate this being in New Zealand. On my first trip there, I was with Gary Cook and a whole bunch of other luminaries of the country. I miss Gary. And they took me to a place in the forest which I had no idea what they were talking about. I was really tired. I've been on the road for 4 weeks, traveling up and down the country. I just wanted to sleep in the back of the van, and then I woke up. This was in the North Islands, and not far from Taupo. And I suddenly woke up, and I said, "Are we going between those two mountains?" Yes. Why? I'm getting a sort of a hit or something. Then people looked at me like with deer in the headlight look, and I thought maybe this isn't the kind of group to talk about this kind of thing. I thought I'm just going to go back to sleep. Don't worry about me. So they drove through this forest called the Kaimanawa Forest, and you know what's coming up. And they stop the van and they're pointing over there at something, so a bunch of rocks, like a sort of a part of an aho, one of those step mounds that you find all over Polynesia. And I started looking over here and I went, what are you two guys doing here? And it turns out that some of the friends of the Shining Ones and the Watchers happen to also be related to other groups of entities which look after the giants' graves in Britain, one of which was under my care. I had to go and clean it up, take away the debris, the dead branches. It was under my little sort of patch. And these things are like 30-foot tall pieces of bamboo. That's what they look like to us. And they're very thin and they sway around, slightly drunken in a wind, and they make this lovely old sound. They're kind of funny. And there they are, sticking out of the ground. I'm going, what the hell are you two doing here? I said, oh, it's like you caught them smoking behind the shed. Well, we look after this place as well. So you got two jobs? Oh, yeah, lots of jobs. Wow. And I looked at the van and they're all looking at me like, uh-oh. What are you looking at? They said, well, give me a piece of paper and a pen, I'll draw them for you. So I was sitting there drawing these bamboo gods. And I said, that's what they look like. And they go, that's amazing. I said, well, not really. Anybody can see them. You just have to, extend your aura. Well, no, what's amazing is that the last guy that was here to look at the Kaimanau wall was Hamish Miller. I said, well, that was my dowsing teacher in England. I said, yeah, he drew exactly the same people on the same location. So we know he's not mad. Yeah, it was a lovely moment. And then I discovered the Kaimanau Wall with these people and I've been researching it ever since. So yeah, it's funny that there is that connection between the British side and New Zealand in the middle of this forest.
That's right, and I love that synchronicity. It's confirmation, isn't it, when you and someone in a completely different, time has drawn the same image. It's confirmation that there's definitely something there, to be seen if we can see it.
Oh,
Um,
I think we all need confirmation. I think we tend to think that we all want to be very special. We are special, but sometimes your ego gets in the way and you start making things up to give you that sort of credibility. You don't need that in this life. You just go and hang out with those little hotspots. And believe me, the magic is very real. And what you get back by not expecting anything is very valid. And then you keep doing it. It builds up your confidence. And after a while, it becomes second nature. You start seeing, I mean, I can see energy right now. There's one running through an energy line running through my apartment. I'm sitting on it. It's the only place where I can put my computer. So it's feeding me and I'm feeding it. And anybody that I know, I guarantee there's one running through your patch of land as well. Anyone that does this kind of work, they're either attracted to a location where it already exists or they're attracted to the location. One way or the other, everybody seems to be on the same grid. So I guess it's part of that sort of confirmation that you are on the right path. You become part of the actual big plan.
That's right, indeed. And the Kaimanawa Wall is sometimes known by some New Zealanders as the Kaimanawa Pyramids as
I think
well.
it's an Ahu. I think it might be an Ahu. Yeah,
I know you've got a contributing author in your book, Ivy Megan, who talks about the Kaimanawa Wall or that experience in
that's
the Kaimanawa
right.
forest. So, she gives another interdimensional kind of perspective of that environment as well. And that's what I love about the personal stories too. You get people's own stories being told, and you start to realize that everyone's got a different lens, but there's confirmation within all these different stories, like you mentioned, like with you drawing these bamboo, you know, um, figurines. When
The
you listen
flute
to people's
gods.
stories, the similarities.
Yeah, it's like watching the wind blow and they're going like this. It's like, they're so funny. It's not what they look like in their reality. They're trying to project an image in our culture that we can understand and be comfortable with. But it is very funny though. And there's all kinds of fairy folk. I mean, I picked up this sort of goblin creature in Ireland when we were at a mound. Again, back when I was learning the stuff, I mean, really, really learning by experience. And we're we went to a cemetery in Ireland, which used to be an old sacred site, an old Celtic sacred site. Sorry, Gaelic, the big difference. And just to see the difference between ages. And we finished, and I had my arms down by my side. I felt someone pulling at my finger, and I picked up this creature. It was about this big, with a sort of an onion head with a protruding belly and little sticks for legs. And I thought, what the hell is this? And he started complaining. I had to put him down. It's like, bloody hell, he's got a bit of an ego. He was very proud. He didn't want to be picked up. And I'm going, and people were looking, what are you doing? And my psychic friend was laughing ahead of, you guys can't see this? Are we the only two people that can see this? And he was very proud, and we walked out, and I just kept my finger like this, and he just grabbed onto my finger with his little fingers, and he just took him right to the edge of the energy field, and then poof, disappears. Yeah, because they're
Wow.
still in that portal. They can't come through. They're tied into that particular area. Oh, it's absolute magic, but I never even knew that was even possible.
No, and okay, so this gives me a little bit of curiosity. We're talking about goblins, but I've noticed since becoming, I don't know if it's just because I've become, a parent 12 years ago. I've got a 12-year-old daughter and an 11-year-old son. And having a daughter introduce me or reintroduce me to the whole concept around unicorns and, all the magic around rainbows and things like that. See, when I was growing up, I was born in the late 70s. So when I was little, I was in the 80s, and we had Cabbage Patch dolls and Barbies. And I can't say there's anything too magical about Barbie dolls. But, for her, it was unicorns. And then it progressed naturally into dragons. And her talent is drawing. So she has somehow channeled through and drawn possibly thousands of dragons by now. Like she's been drawing
Oh, wow.
dragons for the last 5, 6, 7 years. And I asked her, where do you get the ideas for all the different dragons? For me, I had no idea. There was so many different types of dragons with different qualities, different
Yeah.
defenses, different purposes, different, body types, wing types, all the rest. And she just says it just comes to her. She just sits in the flow of her own quiet zone, and these dragons just come through and express themselves on paper, or now she's got an iPad that she draws on, and it's quite remarkable. But it's made me think, especially after reading your book Portals, and we kind of touch on serpent lions and dragons and things like that, that in the
Yeah.
last decade, is there once again a resurgence where, as a collective consciousness, we are prepping ourselves or becoming ready to re engage with the real meaning behind the serpent lines and the dragons and things like that, and what they truly mean in terms of energy and energy lines. Because you were mentioning you were sitting on an energy line, and there might be one here. So are we ready to actually start engaging with the true meaning behind it, and not sort of that pop culture things sometimes where dragons can be evil and breathe fire and destroy and stuff like that? Are we kind of ready to re-engage with the more indigenous philosophies around the serpents and the energy lines and the dragons?
Oh, they're essentially marking this, or they manifest as a sort of a quality, the type of energy that flows through the land. Scientists call it telluric currents. We call them earth energy, or dragon lines, or fairy paths. Basically, they just meander. Currents are electrical and magnetic, so they meander like dragons. So again, it goes back to the fact that that's not exactly what they look like in reality, but the energy projects itself into our consciousness in the way that it's acceptable. So in different cultures, you see dragons and serpents in a very different way. In China, they're prevalent everywhere. And anybody that works with feng shui in China understands this, because they'll know that there's a certain quality about that dragon line, and that one has a different dragon line, and the dragons look slightly different. Yeah, because it's about it's a quality. You're listening to the same piece of classical music, but you got Mozart over there, and over there you got Beethoven. So it's the same music, but there's a slight difference to the two. And that's essentially what they're doing. It's the energy projecting into our consciousness, and our brain goes, oh, okay. And it starts building up a chemistry to give you a visual image, and then that projects through your hand onto a drawing. I mean, to the point where it became very necessary when all of this stuff was being destroyed by the church, especially in Europe, and the stonemasons would mark on the stones the dragons in certain parts of the building to let you know that that's where the current comes through. So when you couldn't tell, and the church was obliterating the sites or building their churches on top of the old sites, then the stonemasons would go chock, 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 chock. And if you walk around the buildings and you look around, you go, oh, there's a dragon and the serpent and that column. So if you stand there, you're getting the tingly wingly, very technical term, that one. There's going to be a test at the end of this. You're getting the tingly wingly, and it is exactly. If you can take a $20,000 piece of electrical equipment and go there and prod it, and you go, yeah, there's a reading here which is different from the rest of the building because that's where the concentration of energy flows down the nave. So it's very clever interaction, and it's also a very good way to teach people who otherwise would not understand the invisible energy and how it works, to give them a visual shape that then they can understand.
Mm, And it seems like humans do very well with stories and being able to have that kind of imagery and metaphors to understand, what's going on with the energy, and
Yeah.
like you say, telluric currents and things like that. I know I found it quite fascinating as well when I was talking to my daughter about her latest dragon. She calls it a mist dragon. And I asked her, what does a mist dragon do? Or like, what's it all about? And she says, it creates mist around portals as a way of defending the portal from people who are not ready
Oh,
to enter it. And I thought, oh, there you go, a
oh
bit of
well,
talk.
I should have interviewed her. I think I see a chapter coming here.
Do you
No,
want?
she is absolutely right. That's what I was talking about earlier, where you're approaching the dragon's den, the devil's den, and I'm getting that hit. That's the mist that I was getting. It was a sort of a voice. Mine came in a form of a voice to say, no, the energy in here is not going to do you any good. It's going to undo everything. So she's absolutely right. You are creating a sort of a protective zone to keep the portal, intact in case someone wants to do nefarious things with it, because you can misuse this stuff. Energy is just energy. It's your intent that guides its direction. So it is self-protecting, and the dragon lines are there to make sure that things are nicely tied up. So if you go anywhere near these places, you also, as a tradition of toning, when you actually go near a sacred site, to open up the energy field. So in the southern hemisphere, you go counterclockwise to open it up, and you just walk around, maybe with a gong or something, or maybe just talking. That's all you need to do. And you're literally unwinding the dragon. And before you know it, you go, oh, I feel like I need to go in now. Yeah, because before they were shutting it and they were feeling you out. They were scoping out who's in there, and you're going, oh, all right, I think we can trust this guy. And then the third time around, you go, oh, something's different. You actually feel like there's something, a current going into the portal stone, and you follow that energy. And it's funny because when you walk back out, you're going against the flow, and it's like, backcombing hair, or you got fish coming this way, and you're going, excuse me, I've got to get out of the building. So no, it's a very. I think she's right on there. She needs to be encouraged.
Well, I'll tell her that she'll be pleased to know that she's on point with that. And it's
Absolutely. Hey,
yeah,
she can do the drawings for my next book.
okay. She would love to, I'm sure. What is your
I,
next book?
I,
Are you allowed to
I see
say?
the start of a project on dragons here.
Well, it would be great to demystify dragons because being reptilians, they can get a bad rap sometimes, and yet we know that the original origin
Yeah,
of them is not bad at all. Like we're saying with the
no.
energy lines, and I know the Aborigines, Indigenous people of Australia, they talk about the serpent lines too. Like attracting fresh water. If they need fresh water, they'll open up the freshwater serpent lines, and they've got ceremony around that. And
Yeah,
yeah,
the
it's very cool.
Jalkiri.
Mm,
Yes. And also because I mean, there's a lot of stuff on YouTube that goes on to the reptilians and stuff, and it's just people who really have misunderstood what it's all about. They've got these little figurines in Sumeria which appear to have a lizard head and the body of a person. They think, there you go. The gods were doing experiments with reptiles and humans. Oh, don't be silly. Are you telling me that the Egyptian god of wisdom that has a head of an ibis and the body of a man is some experiment with genetics? No, of course not. It's just trying to tell you what these people represent. So you have a concept of sages that went around the world, and this goes back 12,000 years ago to the time of the flood. The sages were called the people of the serpent. So the fact is that if you and I understand how energy works and you can bend it with your intent, which you can, by the way, it's the fundamental principle of creating your own temple. You can actually attract these lines and move them at will. So if once you understand how the energy works, you become a person of the serpent because you can manipulate the currents. So nothing nefarious about it. It's your badge of office. It's your card that says, "Hey, guess what I can do." And they began eventually, 12,000 years later in Rome, they became the College of Algors. There are people that actually go and look at the energy of a building before it opens. That's why we call it the inauguration when you open a building. So it's still in, we still have that vernacular. Yeah, there were real people. They were gods, but the gods were real people, and they could, bend the rules within the rules, and they got this wonderful phrase called the people of the serpent. So very helpful, nothing nefarious at all.
No, that's right. And I love the way you expand on the meaning of words. Like that's like how you just did it then. I mean, I love reading the book too and coming across the word intuition and you broke that down to inner tuition. And
Inner tuition.
I was like, right on, exactly. Like some spiritual development courses that I teach, I often say that you get to the point where the universe is your teacher, it's teaching you. And then when you said that word inner tuition, I was like, it just seems to make so much sense. I love your way that you have with words. It's just brilliant.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think, and the older the language, the more important it is. I like looking at all dead languages, as I call them. Like in South America with Aymara, one of the oldest languages in the world that never developed organically like normal language. We start off with, 100,000 years ago going, ugh. And now today we can say, I'll have a burger with fries with ketchup on the side. So it develops organically to express your environment. But Aymara just shows up out of nowhere and it has a syntax that a computer cannot understand. Now, where did that come from? So once you understand how words were formed originally, you get to understand what the place name means and what it does. So stone circles in Scotland, when you understand what the word means, you know what took place there. So we didn't know that because we didn't know where the origin of these things come from. So it's very important to sort of look at the origin of things, words, because it's like a big library in stone, and it opens up a whole new vista of research. And also, by the same token, it helps you stops you getting into big trouble, like in New Zealand when you address people as kia ora. Well, if you get that last syllable wrong, it goes kia ora, and it calls someone a rat. So you've got to really know what the hell you're doing.
Yes. Yeah, because you'll either get a
It's a
nice
fine
warm
line,
welcome
isn't
back
it?
or a bit
Between
of a fist punch. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Let's talk about cows and cats because you mention cows in your book, and I found this quite fascinating because I was reading a part of your book that says, if we want to find a portal, or we observe nature. And you mentioned a little story about how farmers used to observe a cow that was about to give birth. And it would, break out of its enclosure and it would walk around the pasture for a bit, for a while, seem to find the right spot, then it'll start to decrease its circles and then, settle into giving birth into that kind of meditative state and give birth. And which is sort of a way of the cow knowing where to find supportive energy for the birthing process.
exactly.
When I read that, I was like, I've got a cat that does that. Now he is male and he doesn't birth kittens every day, but every single day he's got a very thorough process for finding his sleeping spot. And we all know cats sleep like 16 to 20 hours a day. So in my belief system, they go into some kind of portal. I think they some kind of out of body experience and they have some kind of little sleeping portal that they go to. Because I notice my cat will do that. He'll walk around the house, spend his time finding where is the last hot energy spot, either because a human sat there recently or
Mm,
because the sun's been on there recently, and he'll find that spot. And then he does these little decreasing circles for ages, like a long time in both
yeah.
directions. He'll wander around, then he starts to do his little pouring, and he can do that for 20 minutes, like it's a long time. And he does this and he gets a purr on, which is like toning. I see it like a toning. He gets this purr going
That's a
on.
very good point.
He sets the vibration and then he settles down into his sleep and he can be out for many, many hours, and he's off in some other world completely. And so I wonder, would you think that these are like little portals? Like,
Animals are much more sensitive to this stuff, and they're certainly sensitive to minute fluctuations in the local magnetic field, to put it in scientific terms. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing with the cows was the monks used to look around and going, "Where should we put a church? Hey, look at the cow. It just did this. That's a hotspot. Boom, put a church there." It was very easy. No, I think we all have this ability, but our brains start getting engaged, and we start overthink things. That's the biggest problem. It's like the brain gets in there. You're trying to intellectualize the process, and you're lost. Before you know it, it's like boom, it's gone. The trick is just to sort of walk around and then ask a question. What is it that I'm looking for? and then let your body take you to this place. It's called your gut feeling for a reason. And in fact, there was a test that was done years ago by dowsers to find out where does the information come in from the universe that gets into the body that allows your rods to react to a question that you asked. And they shielded parts of the human body with lead, and only when they put it on the belly button did the rods not move. So there's your gut feeling. The information is coming in through you as a result of a question you pose to the local energy field. And yeah, cats and dogs are the same way. They're very sensitive to little things like that, and especially cats. When you're sitting there in the room, and they'll look at something invisible, and you're going, "What the hell are you looking at?" They can see the weirdest stuff, and you wish you could sort of plow into their brains to find out what these invisible things that they see in the room. But after a while, you can just be like the cat. In fact, I remember having. What was it? Yeah, my old cat Pickle, before she passed away, she used to sit on my desk because she would never want to be too far away from me, and I really miss her. A special thing. But at one point, I was developing my sort of more sensitive side. There was a moment when, her head kind of came up to start looking at something. And I did the same thing at the same time. We both went like this. We're tracking this invisible person walking across the room, which was the dead guy that died in my cottage. No, lovely guy, by the way, from 300 years ago, very tall. Name was Richard, and he would sit on my chair. Sometimes we'd meet on it, which is kind of strange. And he'd look at my computer screen and he'd say, he looks at this all day long, but I don't know how he makes a living from it. Well, he was from the 18th century. What the hell would he know about a computer screen? So, yeah, one day the cat and I literally started watching the same dead guy walking across the room. I thought, good one. Yeah, we can all do this though. It's just a matter of being much more mindful. I have this technique, and I wrote in the third part of the book, techniques for you to play with when you want to make the best out of your time with portals. And one of them was being much more mindful, because we don't switch off. And I said, you know what? I'm going to teach you how it was taught to me, and that is we walk into a room, we're about to learn something from the mystery schools, and our fearless, glorious leader says to me, can you name me 10 sounds that you heard in the last 15 minutes? And I thought, door closing, footsteps, your voice. No, that's it. I can only name three. Okay, go out for a walk, extend your aura, extend your vision and your ears, and come back in 15 minutes. So, okay. And you come back, and she says, right, name me all the sounds that you heard in the last 15 minutes. And you can't stop talking. To the point where you're saying, well, I heard the wheat actually expanding because the sun came out and the wheat was going, and someone was doing a washing line in the, a field 5 blocks away, or their car went by it, or there's a dragonfly. And suddenly you become so sensitive to your environment, you're taking in all of this information. And the next step is that your vision starts following as well, because sound is your first point of contact. The next is your inner vision. And once you keep doing it, just like driving your car, you remember when you do your first driving lesson, and you're absolutely shit scared because you can't do it. Well, look at you now. You can drive, almost blindfold. It's the same thing. You're just developing this technique, getting comfortable, getting, conversant with the world around you. And before you know it, you'll see the energy, where it's flowing, the polarity, the color, and then you'll see people. You'll get the lottery tickets. That's how it happens, basically. You're just developing these gifts that you were born with, but your peers and your parents probably talked you out of it. So, yeah, again, it's a good time for us to sort of tune into all this stuff, because we really need this sort of toolbox that we're missing.
Well, we do. I mean, as a collective, as a society, meditation and mindfulness are practices that are really taking off and becoming very, very popular.
Yeah.
And when we want to learn how to access portals and sort of explore that, like you mentioned, it's important to be like not take your problems into a portal. You want to go in a positive
You'll get it
energy.
magnified 10 times. Oh,
Exactly,
that's what you want? Okay, here's some more problems.
exactly.
It's like a duplicating machine, the portal. What you take in there is what it duplicates. It's like, I don't care. You want problems? Okay, here's your problem. If you go in there and say, well, I'm not sure what I need, but I've got, I'm trying to fix something. I'm trying to become whole. Any guidance would be fantastic. And then have a sandwich and don't expect anything. And before you know it, voices are coming, books are falling out of shelves, coincidences with people who say, hey, I've got something for you. I think it's you. And suddenly, before you realize it, your problems have been solved because of this wonderful connection. And that's how it happens. But the trick is not to expect anything, because then it's that expectation fills in the gap between the time of manifestation, and you start filling in the gap with your need for validation. And then you're back to where you began again. You're kind of, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. So just let it go, and then the magic really happens, and then you'll be surprised.
That's right. And it reminds me a lot about miracles. I always find miracles fascinating throughout history because it's those
Oh, yeah.
miraculous moments that science has no explanation for. And it's a similar process, I feel, as when you go into a portal, is that you don't have expectations. It's that moment when you completely surrender, and often coupled with an offering, like actually offering back, to the portal or the
Mm.
universe. Which is the same as like often people in history would perhaps make a pilgrimage to a saint, and then they would say they just completely surrender to the energy of the saint, but also with an offering like, if I'm healed, or please, I surrender to you, and then I'll be of service for the rest of my life. Like, so there's an offering of being of service. And similar kind of energy within portals is around no expectations, but surrendering to the beautiful energy of the portal, but also making a little offering. Can be as simple as planting a tree, or doing an act of service, an act of kindness, or something like that, something that's from the heart, that's full of gratitude, and making connection to the environment or the nature and the spirit of the land as well, and holding gratitude for the spirit of the land. Um, and would you sort of say that's quite similar with your experience of portals, that when you go in, you kind of just surrender into it without the expectation, and that's kind of when the miracles or the magic really happens?
Oh, absolutely. And you're right. You should take something there, even if it's just a word of gratitude, like thank you. And I usually do that when I go off to Egypt because there's so much tourism there. I remember during COVID, I'm leading the only groups in Egypt, and they couldn't throw five-star hotels at us. It was wonderful. And but I remember walking up to the Great Pyramid and the peace and quiet of nobody around. And the building actually looked at me and it breathed out this sigh of relief. It's like, oh God, finally, someone here just to have a perfect conversation with instead of people taking pictures of themselves. I mean, the sites are fed up with this. They are living, breathing organisms. They're very sensitive. So, they're easily offended. But all you have to do is say, thank you very much for allowing us to be here today with the group. And we're not expecting anything to happen. We're just going to go in there, do a little meditation, and we're going to also put in a little bit of our light in there, because people always want to go to these places and draw stuff. I said, well, if you're taking money out of your bank account and you don't deposit anything, pretty soon you're going to be overdrawn. And then what are you going to be? So the first thing I usually do in the guided meditation is I have no idea what's going to happen. Two, I have no expectations of anything. I don't even know if we are going to do a meditation. I don't even know if it's the right opportunity. I just go, whatever. And we'll go there and you feel the thing out and you go, no, I think we can do something. So let's actually put something in here. Let's take a little bit of the light that we have and replenish the site and let's see what happens. And every single time, because I mean, I'm also out of body when I'm guiding people. I have no idea what happens for 30 minutes. And people will say, that was a great meditation. I said, I have no idea what happened. And, they try to record things, nothing works, typical. And I said, no, the idea is that we put something in as a group. And if the group is very coherent, it really expands the experience. And then everybody starts seeing what I'm seeing as well, which is incredible. And I love it for them because, I didn't know that was going to happen. And they weren't expecting that either. So everybody feels really good. But it's the fact that you're given something back, like you're watering the plant, okay? And the plant goes, oh, water, thank you. So there's a dual relationship that goes on, a bit of backwards and forwards. And before you know it, you develop this wonderful relationship with this invisible family. And it's like, you can't wait to go back and spend Christmas with them. How many people can say that about their families? It's like, oh God, I got to go and spend Christmas with my family. Please shoot me. I hope the car breaks down. Yeah, I mean, it's an actual engaging thing because they want to help. Okay, they say, we know how difficult it is to be in the physical body because we've done it already. We know how difficult it is. That's why we're here. So if you ask us for help, we'll send you information in a way that will make sense to you. Just don't take us for granted. That's the most important thing. And please leave a little bit behind so that we can also grow in our own level of reality. And it becomes a wonderful relationship and they'll never let you down. Never. They won't make your life much easier, because sometimes you have to trip over your own problems in order to find out what the hell you're doing wrong. Otherwise, it would be too easy, wouldn't it? Have the management fixes all the things for you, and you just basically sit back on a lilo, have some tequila, and off you go playing the lottery. No, it doesn't work that way. You still have to do the work. They're just giving you the tools for you to apply to make your life a little bit easier. But tripping over yourself is not a bad thing because it wakes you up. The important thing is not to make a habit of it.
I can see how portals have kind of really influenced you, and I know that my interactions with portals has been very influential in my life too. And I have to say, I love being on planet Earth, despite obviously being in the physical body can be challenging. We all know that, but
Uh,
engaging with portals, it introduces us to the fact that, or it helps us remember that there's magic every day, that we are bigger than just ourselves and our physical body, that we are actually connected to nature, connected to the cosmos, connected to Mother Earth, Father Sky, all the rest of it. Even the rocks have memories that we can access if we want to and tell us stories that we could never imagine nor read in a normal library. So, for someone though that is listening to this or comes across your book, The Portals, for the first time, and perhaps is living what they might consider a rather mundane life, they're not that enthusiastic about it, perhaps they've just got a regular job they're doing to pay the bills. Is there something that exploring portals and the nature of portals could do for them to help them find motivation or enthusiasm for being here?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, it's a bit like sort of going out for a walk at lunchtime and sitting in a park instead of sitting in a takeaway or a restaurant. You just feel so much better under a tree or a rock, and then you realize 9 times out of 10, people, your subconscious is drawing you to that area. And I like the area around the library in Central Wellington, by the way. There's something special around there, especially around Oriental Bay as well. I love it there, and I wish I was thinking rich that I could afford to live there. I'm working on it. Uh,
Ask the shining ones, let's manifest something, eh?
the book actually went to #1 today in the first day of sales, so it's actually a bestseller already. I thought, yes, I'm getting closer to actually buying my way into New Zealand. But anyway, leave that aside for a second. No, our subconscious will send us to places where we suddenly feel very at ease with our environment. We are at one-ment with the environment. That's what it means, and they're everywhere. There was a person I was talking to in New York yesterday, and they said the same thing. It would be great if we have a portal in New York. I said, you got hundreds of portals in New York. Just because you got buildings doesn't mean that the buildings aren't sitting on something special. There'll be a special coffee shop or a gallery because the people that bought the space already were tuned into it, especially artists because they're so much more connected. There's, for example, a big obelisk in Central Park that there's Scottish Rite Freemasons, people who really know what the hell they're doing. I'm not talking about the other Freemasons. They are you don't want to hang out with those. The Scottish Rite Freemasons understand exactly what we're saying here, and they found that hot spot in Central Park, dragged the obelisk all the way over from Tutmosis III's little area, plonked it there, and you stand at the bottom, you go, oh yeah, I'm getting that little bounce, that little tingly wingly. And there's another one on the other side of Central Park, which is actually a glacial erratic. It was put there at the end of the Ice Age, has all the little sort of crosses where rocks have been carved on it. And you just sit there and you go, oh, this is much better, and you do. You just melt in with the stone. So they are everywhere. You don't take the stuff for granted. Yeah, I mean, if you're sort of more of a, if you're Taurian in the astrological sense, you obviously are not. That's not good enough for you. You have to go to something big and impressive. So you go to Kuratawhiti or Castle Hill in the South
Mhm.
Island because you want to go there, you want to make the journey, you want to, lick it, touch it, and hug it, because that's who we are. Someone else can say, I don't have to do the traveling. I can just go and sit at home and go inside because I've got my own temple. I can spin my own Merkaba, and before you know it, you're away with the fairies. And the Tamil and the Buddhists will say, yeah, you don't need physical structures. You've already got it in here. So these things are everywhere for your own good. And again, the Egyptians said it so well. We'll continue building temples until people realize they are the temple. We're building this as an insurance policy for you so you can rebuild your toolbox because they recognize incarnation as a spiritual death. That's what they called it. And the Greeks. And they said, we forget why we've come here. That's part of the whole thing. When you're in the soul world, you know everything. You've been incarnating billions of times, but then you go, I haven't had that experience yet. So I'm going to go to Earth and become a hot dog salesman, because of whatever reason. And you come out of your mother's womb and the doctor holds you upside down, whacks you on the bum, and it's going to be painful for the next 80 years. And you forget everything. And then here's the irony. You spend the rest of your life watching podcasts, reading books, going to lectures, watching television and, spiritual channels to try and find out the tools to find out who you are, where you came from, and what you're doing here. And the reason why people go to the portals is that they actually sit there and the veil is so much thinner that it allows you to go back and retrieve that information. It's like you're going into a reference library. And the more you do it, the more you get used to leaving the body for a little bit, coming back and going, well, that was interesting. And you write it down. I don't tell this to many people. That's how I start writing most of my books. It's from sitting someplace and going, what's this about? Bad news, because a whole sort of, 5 sentences would come right down in my notebook. And I go, wow, that's never been considered before. I wonder if it's true. Well, of course it is, but then I have to go to a library or I have to look at old musty books and start getting the science to write it down, and it's all there. So it's my first point of contact I've discovered when I go to these places is to help me do my own job. So why not make it easy for yourself? But of course, I don't talk about that because people think, well, if this is the point of reference where this guy gets his stuff from, it can't be a good book. No, but you're missing the point. The fact is, I can back it up with real facts and real evidence. That is the hard work that goes into writing these things. The beginning, I've made life easy for myself by knowing where these things are and living in an apartment where the energy already is there anyway. I don't have to go that far. And then you're using that as your foundation, and then you go from there. So you can do this as an accountant or a car mechanic. It doesn't matter. It's how you apply the tools that's important and how you improve yourself with them to make your life much more connected to what the purpose for which you came here.
I love that. And I love that about your style too, because you are very noetic, meaning you've got that inner knowing, you've got that kind of spiritual guidance and that energy awareness, but you do couple it with research and science. And it's this perfect kind of marriage. And to have someone write about portals and give us some practical tips so that we're not all, opening when we should be closing and going on with our baggage and, all that kind of stuff, which we don't want to
I
do.
know. Don't touch that portal. That's pure evil, that one. Don't go anywhere near that one. No,
Yeah.
you cannot get evil out of a portal. I mean, if you take it in there, it will come back as something very nefarious. I have had that thrown at me. I said, no, there's no such thing as an evil portal or a light portal. It is a portal. It's just a neutral space. It's what you take in. So be careful of your emotion. Energy, emotion, great word. Your feelings, your fear. If you take fear in there, it just duplicates fear again, and then dark stuff comes out because it's looking for that. So just go in the neutral state, and that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. And it's wonderful you've got other sort of materials as well, like the art of temple making. That seems to be really complementary to the book of portals as well, like for people that are wanting to create that kind of space. Like you
Oh
mentioned,
yeah,
portals are
thanks for reminding
everywhere.
me of that.
Because portals are everywhere, but with the art of temple making too, you can start to create that energy of a portal or a temple as well within your own home. I know you've done that, haven't you, in your own lounge?
Oh God, yeah, there's one here, and people go straight to the center of the portal here. That I have stones here, cunningly hidden among bookshelves and record shelves and things, because otherwise they'd be tripping over these things. And they'll go exactly where I know they're going to sit. They could have a choice of anywhere to sit. They'll go exactly to that one spot where the core of the energy is, and they don't realize it, and they'll just go, good energy, and they have a, I'm just amplifying what was here already using these techniques. And yeah, and that's why one of the reasons why I think the publisher approached me and they said, yeah, you've already done this. You've already taught workshops on how to attract energy and use the right geometry and the right direction and everything to build these little sort of hot spots of energy and create your own sacred space. So it's not really a big jump for you. And I thought, oh, that's kind of true, but I'm still want 10%. I'm not giving you a discount. But yeah, that was my idea of looking at 30 years of looking at temples all around the world and distilling it down to its lowest common denominator. So if my grandmother was still alive, I could actually show her and she could build it. It's that simple, but it does take 15 years to learn by observation and experience how to do it. Yeah, you'd think that they get someone else who can do this a little bit faster, but there's no shortcuts. You have to go through the process, and it does work. And the feedback that I get is extraordinary. To which I always say, once you built this in your living room or your garden, or someone's actually designed one surrounding an entire city to cure create a healing environment up in Nova Scotia. So they actually had to use GPS to put these massive crystals in a geometric pattern across Nova Scotia. That's dedication to duty. And they said, yeah, I was monitoring what was going on in these towns, and as soon as we activated the portal, suddenly people getting healthier. There's a marked difference in people's health. So they were toning the actual environment with this incredible, massive. I think they built a massive pentagram. It was like 40 miles wide. That's incredible. So, and again, size doesn't really matter. You can build one that big and just project your consciousness into it. You don't have to step into it. So there's one of these wonderful things. And I always say, be careful what you ask for, because you might get it, and it might come in a way you weren't expecting it, because it becomes a living organism and you're interacting with a living organism. So the intention that you take in there, it's going to multiply it. I just had a client here a few miles away that just built one on her land. Same thing. Just went out, got some the rocks, did the process. Took a few hours, and she's already written back and saying, "Wow, yeah, it works."
Yeah.
Even the cats are going to the actual hotspot where in the middle of the stone circle. They never wanted to go in that part of the lawn, but now they want to go there. Yeah,
Yeah.
because she's activated. She's actually drawn in the energy from where it was using the power of conscious intent, because there wasn't anything there before, anchored it, and it's now already pulsating. And the cat just went woof straight in. So yeah, just follow a cat. They'll know where it is,
Exactly. I
or
agree.
just
They
follow a
know.
cow in a field. Then you push it out of the way. Oh, go away. I want to use this portal. Go away.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
That'd be
So,
funny. People going around with cats and cows trying to find a portal, like a sniffer dog. I mean, we can start a whole trend here. I kind of like this conversation. Like I said, I was going to take a sabbatical this year. Well, that didn't work out too well, did it? Book, three-part series on Egypt, probably another project already in here that I want to film in Brittany and with Standing Stones. I've got a couple of other things. There's a few keynote presentations. I'm exhausted just thinking about it. So
oh,
much for my
well,
break.
you'll have to be fed from the energy of portals and just keep getting fed
I
from it.
know. Well, that's why I sit where I am right now. So I'm in this river. It's wonderful. It's like as soon as I move over there, it's like, oh, I want to sit back here again. But there's a lovely river coming right through. And it used to be an Abenaki sacred site as well. There's a lot of, There's a big junction. It's a big X that marks the spot. So I do sense that the Abenaki had a sacred site here at one point, which is the reason why it attracts some very unusual people in this building, and they're all into Buddhism or healing or whatever. So yeah, and they were asking me the same question. And I thought, I think that we're all being attracted to this for that reason, because the
Mm,
Abenaki were very much like the Waitaha, real nature lovers, very gentle people.
mm. Oh, I love that. It's kind of turning your building into a temple of healers and seers and
Oh
seekers. And
yeah.
yeah, I love it.
And make it earthquake proof while you're at it.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Freddie, for your time today. I
Well, thanks,
really,
Gina.
really enjoyed reading your book, and I encourage everyone to grab a copy and also The Art of Temple Making. Well, thanks so much. See you,
Be
Freddie.
well. Bye.
You too.